Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Is It Politicast, your monthly political web podcast from the DA abroad. Now, today we're bringing you a very special episode because we're going to be talking about probably the biggest single issue facing a lot of South Africans abroad, and I will be handing over control to somebody else for the rest of the podcast. So, I'd like to firstly welcome. We have with us today, Jenni Baxter, who's editor of SAPeople. So very welcome, Jenni. And Adrian Roos, who is Shadow Deputy Minister of Home Affairs in South Africa. And we're going to start talking, I think this subject is way more than one webinar, one podcast. So we're going to start talking about home affairs, and we're going to be particularly talking about a petition which we are encouraging those abroad and in South Africa, if they are affected, to sign, which is a petition to get a passport extension stamp of some description, passports, because people are getting desperate overseas, and B, for Home Affairs and DIRCO to start to liaise to really sort out the problems, the longer standing issues which do exist in a lot of the embassies and consulates abroad. And we're going to dig into that over the next, hopefully, 20 minutes, half an hour. But firstly, before I hand over to you, Jenni, the one thing I do want to ask is, the DA is often in quite a, shall we say, press hostile environment, particularly in South Africa. And you've chosen to partner up with us, and just a little disclaimer in terms of Jenni. Jenni is in no way, also SAPeople is in no way affiliated with the DA. But you have chosen to partner up with us on this issue. Why?
Because, first of all, thank you for having me. The main reason is that we're just seriously, deeply concerned. For years, there have been problems with passports taking, 6 months. 6 months became normal. But in the last year or so, it started becoming more normal for 12 months. With COVID, the problem's been exacerbated, and we're getting desperate messages every single day. We're spending so much of our day helping people because there are some very kind people in Home Affairs who help individual members of ours, but it's not helping the huge problem. And we can see there is a huge crisis where, people can't functionally live without their South African citizenship, without their passports, overseas for health, etc. And we tried all the government channels. We've tried speaking to DIRCO, to Home Affairs, to various high commissioners around the world. And while some have been friendly, there's just such a such a huge gap between what South Africans abroad need and what is being done. And I just foresee that if something isn't done within the next few months, it's going to be a catastrophe. And so since, the DA abroad is very strong in its care and concern for South Africans abroad, recently volunteering and helping so many who were stranded abroad, it's teaming up with you guys is a way that, thankfully with Adrian, that we can get this escalated to the highest level of government to actually get it taken seriously and to actually have some fundamental changes. I mean, this is a genuine concern. This is not whinging South African expats. Yeah. This is a proper problem.
Yeah, and we'll get into it. As I say, it's a long-standing issue. It's probably our longest-standing issue. So thank you so much for getting involved and for partnering with us. And I would say to everyone that is watching this, share with your friends. Please, there will be a link to the petition in the description. And I'm going to say this at least 100,000 times over the next 20 minutes. You need to sign that petition. Without your input from those overseas and from those who are affected, we will not be able to motivate this to the level that it needs to go. So I'm going to say it again and again and again, but please make sure you sign that petition, which will be in the link for this video. So with that, Jenni, I will hand over to you and you have the reins.
Thank you, Justin.
Pleasure.
Hi, Adrian.
Hi.
I think for a start, many South Africans South Africans abroad find this problem only when they go to renew their passports and they suddenly discover how difficult it is, how long it takes. And many of them can't even get hold of their embassies. They're phoning, they're emailing, there are no answers. And they just don't know what the process is, what's meant to happen. They can't get answers. Is there any chance you could start off by just explaining what the process is from the moment of application to actually getting your South African passport back, your new South African passport?
Yeah.
Please.
Oh, thanks, Jenny. I think that's a very important point, and especially in this COVID time, many embassies did have a legitimate reason for being closed, but even when they're open, then some of them, the Home Affairs Department then reports that they are closed, and so there's a big communication gap, especially for South Africans that are not able to travel directly to their embassy easily. It's a very big problem in terms of accessibility. So the answering of emails, the answering of the telephone, it's a general home affairs issue all round. So, it's one thing to be open, and the claim is that a lot of these embassies that are open, but really it's the accessibility and making sure that officials answer the phone, that they answer the emails, that we don't have situations like we have now where people need to apply for and wait for 4 to 6 weeks just to apply. So you've got to apply to apply. Because typically the process is that you would go and fill in the forms, and you do a manual application, taking your photos, fingerprints, etc. And then that gets sent off in a diplomatic bag to South Africa. And that diplomatic bag, it has a number of other documents in it and materials in it. And it doesn't necessarily get sent off timeously. So we've had reports, I asked parliamentary questions about this where they claim that it gets sent within a month. I think the general understanding is that they wait for it to fill up. So it can take several months before that bag even moves. So you can have, I heard a story the other day of an official pointing to a bag in the back of the office and saying, here's applications that haven't gone yet. And it was a bag of applications. So once it eventually does get in that diplomatic bag system, then it gets sent off to DIRCO, and then DIRCO sorts everything out and sorts the Home Affairs applications, and then they get sent to the Home Affairs office, and they're handled as manual applications over there. So that means that somebody needs to capture the photo, make sure that it's okay. So we have a number of issues where after all that waiting, they find that the photo's inadequate. And then often it stops because there's not a proper tracking mechanism. And then once the person inquires, then they say, oh, the photo's unacceptable. So I've got a lady that's in South America. She's been stuck since the beginning of 2018, and she's resent her photos 6 times. So this whole thing of sending manual applications and that manual process is one of the big problems. And the time it takes then to capture that application once it reaches Pretoria. So typically you would expect that, once that's captured, it would take the same amount of time as a local application. So if you look at the 6 months even, you might expect 1 month for the diplomatic bag to come, then the passport application to take 2 weeks to process as it does here, and then another month back. So there's this mystery 4 months. Why is it that you apply manually here and it can take a few weeks to respond, whereas you've applied from overseas, once the document gets here, it's exactly the same document, and it mysteriously takes 4 months to process. And then once that happens, then it gets sent back to to DIRCO, put into the diplomatic bag, and then that diplomatic bag waits again to fill up and go back to the embassy.
So is it all done digitally for South Africans in South Africa?
So you have different size offices. So you have large offices, medium, small offices. So typically the small offices are not big enough to have the equipment in them. And so you still have manual applications that happen. So the bigger offices, they all have electronic applications. And what happens there is you don't have to take a photo in. Your fingerprints and your photo is taken digitally. And that is automatically encrypted into a package that gets sent straight to the printer.
So it would make sense then that if that's working in South Africa at some bigger offices, it would save a lot of time with these diplomatic bags and everything if a similar system could be implemented overseas.
Well, yes, if you consider that once you make the application, that information is in an encrypted package that gets sent straight to the printer. You don't have the issue of having to check the photos and so forth. That is already done. It's accepted by the system. So it would chop out the whole necessity to send anything because it would happen electronically. It's highly encrypted. It would get there, and then it's just a matter of sending the physical document back. So it would dramatically improve things.
And it feels like, I mean, it would be good if you could just tell us exactly where you think the problems are, but it feels like there just aren't enough staff, to answer the phones, answer the emails, and doing something like that would cut down the need for so many staff members to be manually doing everything.
Yeah, well, I think there's different scenarios in different parts of the world, and some offices really are quite small. So I think there's two sides to the story. There's some offices that are very big or that have a very large volume. So, for example, London is a classic example. Even the UAE, you have numerous applications going from there, and so there it makes sense to invest in the technology. I mean, since March this year, we have a new tax on South Africans abroad, where they have to now pay up to 45% of their foreign income to the South African government. And the question is, what are you getting for that? Yeah. I questioned the deputy minister on this. Why do they not put the electronic capture devices into some of these embassies? And he said, well, they don't have the money. But this is an unacceptable answer to me, because now there's tax revenues coming from these South Africans abroad. So they're good enough to pay tax, but they're not good enough to get a decent service from government.
And this is one of the things that concerns me, because right now with the passport problem, and then, as you say, this tax coming in, there's not only a catastrophe for people overseas, but now they're saying, well, why should we hang on to our citizenship since it's so difficult? We'll just become citizens of the new country, not pay tax to South Africa. And I think that the repercussion is so huge, because South Africans are normally loyal to their country. They're the ones who go back on holiday, who later invest in property in South Africa, Do you agree that there is a value to the South African, to treating the South Africans abroad with equal respect, and not treating them like they're less important?
Yeah, I think this is one of the key issues. We talk about the technicalities of the process and that, and a big problem I have as well is just the way that people are treated, and the number of stories I get of people that are treated really badly, and to me that's just unacceptable. I mean, this is if you talk about a passport application, it's a document that you are constitutionally entitled to, and it's the government's responsibility to ensure that you are given that constitutional right. They need to give effect to it. And they need to help you to apply for that. So being evasive or not being available, not giving a decent service, the number of stories of arguments, and I believe a lot of it is just due to sheer frustration. But still, there's a certain level of professionalism that one also expects out of those offices. The motto of Home Affairs is "We care." And I've challenged the minister and the deputy on several occasions recently to say, I think you need a new motto. We really need to have that, the understanding of what South Africans overseas are going through, which clearly isn't there. So, for example, with this petition, where we highlighted to the minister, and in the letter that I wrote to the minister, I specifically said, it's South Africans abroad, they're working, studying, or living there, and their rights to be there are being threatened. And this is a serious issue. And then in the response was that, well, the passport can't be stamped, they can just travel back. And it's this complete lack of understanding and empathy for what is going on out there. That is really a problem. So apart from the technological situation, and that, it's also part of it is just the basic standard of service and care that is being given to South Africans overseas. And as you say, that they're not treated like second-class citizens.
Yeah. Can I just jump in here quickly, Jenny?
Yes, of course.
So Adrian's absolutely, both of you have covered the important, quite a few important points there. But I mean, one of the sort of caveats to this is, and I know of anecdotal stories. It's not only they may be getting bad service and be used to a certain level of service. When you go to in South Africa, you go to this Home Affairs and you're not going to get a great service. This Home Affairs you might get an okay service. Depends where you are. It's luck of the draw, really. The challenge overseas is people are used to a very good government service for a lot of people. I mean, if we talk about the primary destinations of where, the biggest populations of South Africans abroad, Australia, UK, Canada, by quite a margin from everything that I've read, they're used to a service that is integrated, that is quick, that is digital. If I think about my UK passports experience, my wife's changed her name, didn't have to leave the house. I've changed my driver's license, didn't have to leave the house because you've got to integrate a system that just takes the photo from your passport, puts it on your driver's license, renews it, and also when you phone, the phone gets picked up. So it's not only that there's a lower level of service that they're receiving from a lot of the embassies, it's also the fact that they're used to a higher level of service and they're going, well, this is what a government should do. There's no government overseas that's perfect by any stretch, but the level of service is just basic. It's the civil servants do the job that they are paid to do, and so there's that comparison. And as you mentioned earlier, your worst case is somebody walks in, has a bad experience. I know somebody personally who did this and decided, you know what, it's not worth me keeping my South African passport. That's investment lost. It's tourism lost. That's a walking advertising board, for lack of a better term. Now that person's not going to talk positively about South Africa to those around them. They're going to talk negatively about it. So there's huge implications for all of this.
Yes, and where I also agree with you is that people overseas are used to a higher standard of service, but also what happens is how things become the new normal. So, in 2014, we were already writing about the 6-month wait, but the 6-month wait has just become normal. And now people are talking about a year. I know somebody who sent an embassy a happy birthday card, on a year when he still hadn't got his passport back. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to.
And Adrian, do you know, in general, in my experience, it's 2 to 3 week turnarounds for foreign passport applications for my family members. Do you know what the average is for foreign expats in other countries, who aren't South African? What should people be expecting,
Well, yeah, I know. I think, sometimes you just take, I guess, a similar country in regard. And I saw a story recently that India was announcing a 2-day turnaround time in their passport applications, and saying that if there is a problem or a query, then it might take up to 2 weeks. And they guarantee to capture your application on the same day and then get it back to you. So a country like India, that's a similar country in the BRICS group of countries that we probably should be comparing ourselves to quite favorably.
Yeah. And not even, I really just want a solution. So would the South African government ever think about working with India and saying, so how are you doing it? What could we do similarly? Is there, that's what I'm hoping this petition is going to do. And it would be nice if you could tell us exactly what the petition will allow South Africans abroad, a voice, whatever. Because, I think we just need solutions, and we need to know that we're not trying to criticize anymore. We just want it fixed, So what will you be able to do if we get 20,000 signatures, when we get 20,000 signatures?
Well, I think part of the frustration is that it's, we've already mentioned some of the potential gaps that are there, and the solutions seem so simple, which is one of the frustrating things. There just clearly isn't a political will to look at this challenge at all.
Yeah.
No, that's so true, Adrian. And that must be really sad. I've contacted one of the embassies at the moment is having a big problem with their website not working. And so we're getting all the queries, and as I said before, we're a news site. We're not an immigration, And
Yes.
so I said to this particular embassy, I said, if you like, just to help the South Africans abroad in your country, we could host some of the documents that they need to print off, and we could help you, just until your website is fixed. And this person just ignored me, just ignored our offer to help, and I just thought, where's the will? Where's the will to help? And this, this website has now been down for at least a month that I know of.
Mm.
It's crazy. So I, are these people trained? How are they selected?
But yeah, so I think just to get back to the second part of the previous question, when we're talking about what we're asking from the minister, the first thing is really just to ensure that that South Africans that are living and working abroad have an emergency extension to their passports that covers the 6 to 12 month average wait. So it's important to note that we didn't specify that it must be a stamp. There's a lot of emphasis on the fact that it's a stamp, and this is certainly something that's been done in other countries, and I've given examples. You look at even Kuwait, for example, and it's an important example because they have such a big expat community. But then in recent times that they've realized the problem, they came to a solution. The foreign governments, along with the Kuwaiti government, organized that these stamps would be possible. And it solved an absolute potential crisis there, where you have sort of 2/3 of your population is expat workers. And the second element of the petition is also around, coordinating with DIRCO. So we're saying that Home Affairs should coordinate with DIRCO to ensure that all the facilities are fully open for business and COVID safety compliant. Because bear in mind again, and I go back to the fact that, the access to a passport, and there's other documents as well, by the way, it's a constitutional right, and Home Affairs is responsible for ensuring that South Africans have access to that constitutional right. They can't lay the blame at DIRCO or say, well, sorry, it's DIRCO. So that's the second element of the petition is that Home Affairs and DIRCO really need to proactively ensure that people have access to the service through different channels, whether it's going directly, whether it's on the phone, whether it's by email. Mm. And then in the longer term, it's putting in place measures to reduce the turnaround time, this unacceptable turnaround time. And really, it's just a matter of political will, because the solutions are simple. In your bigger embassies and missions, you have an electronic application process. So that takes out a huge load off the diplomatic bag. And then even in the where manual applications happen, just to allow for a simple process of allowing a courier, so people would pay for a courier service, so that application can be couriered within a day or two, be at Home Affairs, be processed in a couple of weeks, and then sent back within a day or two.
And other countries do that. So it's not, again, there are templates in place where these things are working. So I hope we can convince them that this is what we should try, because all that's happening is that they are getting, you say the frustrations, but right now, by not having the will, they're getting more work. And, this would help everybody. It would help South Africa, the embassies, the staff, and the South Africans themselves. Yeah. So what would you advise South Africans right now? They need to sign the petition. you know, the ones who are desperate, they applied, you know, 8 months ago, and their passports are expiring next month, and they could lose their position as a student, as I know one mother wrote to me and said she could be kicked out of her country, you know, even though her family would be allowed to stay. You know, what can they do? Is there a number they can call? What?
Yeah, so we do assist a lot of people. We have a parliamentary process whereby these applications and the understanding of where it is in the process are escalated, and we certainly sometimes help in terms of what's happening with the diplomatic bags and asking questions. It's not really a long-term solution because there's just so many. It's such a substantial problem. I mean, if you look at the petition, I think there were 3,300 respondents on the first day alone.
Yeah.
It just shows the scale of the challenge. But you know, so certainly at the DA we assist. We have an assist at da.org.za address where people write, and people write to myself as well. And then we forward this through the parliamentary process. So that's one way of trying to escalate these inquiries.
Okay, that's great. Although, as you say, you know, it's becoming more people every single day. So yeah, it's getting Jenni, to a point.
Could I raise a point here quickly? Actually, I mean, we've got to encourage those South Africans abroad. You know, it's no good going right to. It is obviously helpful because it's got you to understand the scale of the problem, but we have to get individuals signing this petition. Now, just as a note, I mean, if you know somebody affected or you want this problem resolved, doesn't mean you have to be affected to sign this petition. Anyone can sign the petition. So, you know, if it's your daughter, your son, your parents, your auntie, it doesn't really matter. You please do sign that petition, because when we go, we have to get, I think the technical number is about 18,000, but let's say 20,000 to be safe. We have to get that 20,000 signatures, because then we can take it to Parliament. It actually will go to a portfolio committee to spark a debate. And then we will start to have these discussions, and we'll be asking formal questions around why is this happening? Because right now it's anecdotal. It's one question here and there, you know, but where this becomes a systemic problem, which is demonstrated by the petition, then we have the means to be able to go to the government and say, right, this needs to be resolved. And I mean, you know, this, Adrian's hit on it a few times, and I think that's probably, there's a lack of will, disinterest. I don't want to use any stronger terms, but just the sheer, there are good people that work in Home Affairs, of course there are, you know, but overall, there seems to be just the sheer disinterest in not wanting to help citizens. Just this idea that, oh, well, they're overseas now, you know what I mean? The arrogance of the answer from the minister, or the deputy minister, sorry, in terms of, oh, they can just come here and do it. I mean, a ticket from the UK, beyond COVID, a cheap ticket is £500. Now, not a huge, you know, everyone thinks you come overseas and you make a gazillion pounds. That's not how it works. You know, you're still living and working in pounds or euros or wherever you are. So that's not the solution. And, you know, one of the things that, unfortunately, there's so many issues within this, but I mean, one of the issues that it drives people to, those that are dedicated, you know, we've spoken about those that have willingly just given up their passports. But those that are dedicated will fly back to South Africa if they have the means, and they will do it in South Africa. Now, I don't know about the legality of that, okay, but this is what people are driven to. You know, this is what people are driven to. You know, we can say that, oh, you're not supposed to do that, but people do it, you know. I mean, maybe there'd be the money if the government hadn't stolen R1 trillion in 10 years. Like, maybe we'd have a bit of change to throw around and start to sort out these embassies. And I mean, there's, you know, the other thing which is slightly worrying. Again, it's we hear stories, so it's whether it's a systemic problem. And you know, I'm here in the UK, and I don't know if it's a more of a wide-ranging problem. But what some people do, because you see this on a lot of your social media platforms and that, they will just go in about 8 months after they've applied with their application and say, I'm here to pick up my passport. And the person there will say, yep, go and check, and their passport is there. Now, they've never been informed of that, okay? They just go in on the off chance, because we're pretty unique in the UK because a huge amount of South Africans live probably within an hour of the embassy. The problem, that is not ideal because obviously they've never received anything. So there's a bit of a chain of custody question there. The second thing that then comes up is a few months later, they will then get an email to say, come and pick up your passport, it's arrived. And they've had it for 3-4 months, you know? So there's a huge amount of issues. But I mean, this has to start with just signing a petition, giving us the formal means to be able to drive this in the government, to drive a formal agenda. It has to happen. That's the way it has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jenny, if I can just also jump in on that one. I think an important element of the petition is also the comments. It's really an opportunity for people to say exactly what they're experiencing and the challenge they're having. So it's not just to say, here's a petition on these 3 things. I think it's really an opportunity for every South African expat to have their say in terms of the service delivery they're getting at their embassies.
100%.
Yeah. I agree. I think we covered everything. Is there anything else you want to add?
Look, I mean, we could go on for days and weeks about this because there's also the economic implications. There's the tourist aspect, you know. Or there's those overseas who are looking to invest in South Africa, but why would they? There's, you know, here we are specifically talking about this petition, and here we are particularly talking about South Africans affected. But it's not just South Africans, you know. There's business people, tourists that are looking to travel to South Africa. I mean, I look at the UK embassy. You wouldn't know, High Commission, you wouldn't know that it's a High Commission looking at the building, you know. Whereas, and using a comparative example, Uganda House is across, so it's in Trafalgar Square, which is a huge tourist destination. So you've got tourists coming to see this, and incidentally, they would be able to see, you know, South Africa House, maybe that could be a holiday down the track. You know, it's all these different aspects that come into this unwillingness, to use that term, for, you know, to be able to just do the bare minimum, not even do a stellar service. It's just to do the bare minimum. So I think it's but it's got to start with this petition. Okay, so to everybody that, you know, take 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute to just sign the petition, and, you know, with that we can now formally drive this. You know, there've been petitions before, and we haven't got the necessary volume, but this has now become a much more urgent issue. You know, people are waiting. And the last point, because I think I know we don't want to keep this going forever and ever, but I mean, the last point is, you know, is a very important point, and one that we are looking into, is that international law states that a country is cannot leave its citizens stateless. Okay. Now, in my head, I'm not a legal person, but in my head, if your passport has 6-8 months left on it, and you go beyond that point, you are stateless. So we need to check this, and I need to, you know, be able to say this. But I mean, there's definitely a case that there's an international law being broken by the government of South Africa, because there are people that are being left stateless, you know. So, but anyway, another time. There's so much to unpack. But yeah, so everyone, for the 100th time, please sign the petition. We have to. The petition drives us all. Okay, we can help you. We're not going to say we're going to solve the problem in a week or a month, but we can start that process. And I'd just like to say thank you, Jenny, so much for interviewing, for running the podcast. That's, you know, really kind of you. And thank you mostly for, you know, partnering up and sort of seeing beyond the pale bit, and seeing that this is a major issue that faces expats. You know? You know, I don't know if we've spoken about, I don't think we've spoken about this, but I mean, there's not a small number of people overseas. It is probably millions. You know, I know Australia in 2018 registered. They are one of the few countries that register each person. And I think they had 680,000 South Africans in Australia, just in Australia. So, you know, and there would be similar numbers here, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a big issue. It affects a lot of people, and it directly affects South Africa. So Jenny, thank you so much. And Adrian, love to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really insightful, really helpful. I think, you know, I'm holding thumbs that we really get the numbers here. And guys, questions, comments, or just leave them in the description below, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are negative and you're trying to troll us, I probably won't get back to you. But other than that, I'd like to say thank you both very much and have a fantastic day. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Adrian. And please sign, everybody. We really need this changed. It's heading for disaster, for major disaster. There are already so many people that are really psychologically, stressed. It's very, very scary for a lot of people. It's not just people whinging, so please sign.
Yeah, just from my side, to echo what Jenny's saying, and we really just know that from the DA and Parliament side, we really feel your anguish. We read every single email. It's really touched us very deeply. So please help us sign the petition, help us to push it through Parliament, and get a long-term resolution to this.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.